they're trying to, put the star-shaped object in the star-shaped hole, and I'm just really stupid and I just can't do it, and that's why I have problems with this. You got all your systems in a document. You scaffold the code, implement the details. Yeah, well, it's like that one thing. Like, how do you draw an owl? Well, you just draw a circle and then you draw the rest of the owl. It's like, yeah. Alright, so let's construct our static height map and see what is going on with this thing. Resolution X and Y. Like, all these things are optimized out of here, aren't they? So we got our water surface, res X, res Y. Alright, so our position is going to be this random garbage position. Our end is going to be... retrace. So we get hits. Hits is empty. Is hits ever none empty? It looks like hits never gets triggered against anything. Okay, well in that case we should have like a white texture or something like that. Or we should have, yeah, we should have like white texture. Oh. Or we're gonna have nothing. What I should be doing is I should be doing something like this and setting it to the F color to start with, and that way I'll never forget all this. Just simple idiot steps that we're doing right now. So the other question is going to be why is the ray trace not hitting anything? And we should at least be able to turn on the debugging for this thing. See what it looks like. Yeah, it's just dash for the trace tag. So you'll have to remind me, Kento456. What are you working on? If I asked at one point, I have forgotten, sadly, because other people who are not me are not really that important to me. I just kind of pretend. I just kind of nod my head and go, yeah, that sounds cool. And then, I'm just pretending to be a human being, honestly. Alright, so we got the static height map. Let's see what we've got going on. Are you familiar with the loyalty tracking systems on Twitch? I am not familiar with them at all. Is this some sort of like communist dictatorship loyalty meter? Where we get basically point systems to reward frequent viewers? Oh no. We have an error because output was... Wait, why is this triggering an error? It's... Revlo is one of them? So you're saying I should do something? Oh, you want to make a progress? Yes. Okay, now I remember. Now I remember a little bit. Each viewer will have a character in progress quest. So what kind of stuff would you be using to hook that up? Like, I know Twitch, you can connect to, you know, the Twitch chat rooms and all sorts of stuff like that. It's just like an IRC room or whatever the hell, if I remember properly. So, I mean, you could just connect to somebody's chat as a, you know, a bot user, see who's in the room and keep track of it, and then you could post messages in there. And you could write that in anything. You write that in Python, you can write that in Java, you could write that in, like, just anything that can hook into those calls. So why is this getting angry? Yeah, whenever I'm writing anything like that, I always do something. So why is this? Why'd I get pissed off? Index is greater than 0 and index is less than array num? So I should just do it like this, to be honest. I should just have just max depth here. Should just call init with max depth on this bastard. It's a uint 8 though, so well, we'll see how it looks. Let's see it. Make it opt-in. Like, you could make a... There's a lot of interesting things. So, do you want it to be just based in the Twitch chat room, or are you actually going to make like a client program that has stuff, you know, like a little character or something that you can look at? Because one of the questions, of course, it'll be web-based with a whole 2D world to look at. Okay, that sounds pretty cool. You'll see your dude wailing on rats. He's like, you're just watching somebody. Is it going to be based on the game that they're playing or that they're watching? So you can like have a little database of random animated sprites or something for different characters in games, and has your dude just like murdering them. So if you're playing Mario, you're watching somebody play Mario, it's just like a bunch of little Marios roll up there, and your dude just like killing Mario over and over. Alright, so we've got our static height map, we've got all this stuff that's been initialized to just all zeros all the time. So it's now black. So we were unsuccessful in our ray casts. It looks like we somehow didn't do things. So let's turn on our... Our ray traces didn't do anything. You already have a sprite and tile set? Awesome. So if it's going to be web-based, using your own engine, or are you grabbing something off the shelf that'll help you with sprite animations? Alright, we have the static flow field, the static height map. So we're going to make this a lot simpler to mess with real quick. Just like, you know, some real basics here so I can know exactly what I'm looking at. It doesn't quite look like black, does it? That looks like green or something. So let's just walk through it and see what it does. Basically an MMO. So which language are you going to be running on the server? Alright, let's take a look at this ray trace. We are not hitting anything. Alright, why not? I keep skipping the actual line. So the position, I need a piece of paper, don't I? So you're going to be writing it in C. Running C on a server. Alright, well, good luck keeping that stable and up 24/7. You're going to have to not ever write a bug. Alright, so our position is negative 500, negative, 500, and then 26,000 or something for the Z. 2650. Alright, our end is going to be 2135. So that is in the negative Z direction, which is down. Okay, you're joking? What? You'll be doing it in Node.js? Alright, that sounds a lot more reasonable. Because a lot of that stuff, like, what would be the point of running C on a server for something like that? Like, C, you're going to have cross-compile issues, right? Like, you're going to have to compile it for Linux if you're running on a Linux server, and then, like, are you going to be developing on Linux? All that stuff jumps into my mind. That didn't seem correct. Get world. The world is null. New Dashkin game instance get world. So the world is null, so we can't trace against the world? Ah. Alright, so what's going on here is basically we're not getting the world. And what we want to do is we want to detect if we're in the editor but not playing in the editor. And grab the editor's world, I think. Well, we'll try it out. Let's make sure we save everything and then close, then we'll go back in. Mess with this stuff. Yeah, I'd assume something like that you're working on there would be... That's a pretty nice little compact project that you can do a lot of cool stuff with. I really like having server-side stuff there where the simulation's all controlled by the server. And then you expose a nice little interface for grabbing all the data. And then you can make the client better and just kind of leave the service running, right? So like if you wanted to implement a whole bunch of cool little customization stuff, just have like little flags or whatever and have that information available. And then, the client can do whatever it wants. So we need to be able to get the world. Alright, so ray trace. Alright, so if the world is null, then what we're going to do is we're going to get the editor world context. You have a state that updates every 600 milliseconds. Making sure the clients render this state seems like a challenge, especially when animations are involved. So your state updates every 600 milliseconds on the server. Well, you don't actually have to render that every 600 milliseconds. You can just fetch from the client, and then it can, render up to the current point in time. So like if the last time they logged in was 3 days ago, you just calculate, every 600 milliseconds since then real quick in a loop and then save it. And then you can just have when they fetch it, just have the client fetch it every, twice a second or whatever, and they'll always get the most up-to-date stuff. The only reason you'd need a real update tick is if characters interacted with each other in real time. In which case, yeah, you'd need a thread there ticking forever. So I need gedit in order for this to work, which means I actually have to compile a whole bunch of crap in because editor specific code gets compiled out. So, damn. So is it pound define with editor? I forget exactly what the pound define looks like. Alright, so we're going to want to include the editor.h is a thing that we need. And then we go down to our ray trace. And we pretty much just want well, we'll see if it works first, right? That's usually what we want to do. And I need to wrap this in this with editor stuff and all that. And we'll see if this gives us what we want. Well, it depends. What kind of... There's a lot of different ways you can set up a server in order to do that stuff. Let's see. Unresolved external symbol, DLL spec, DLL import, get editor world context. So this is going to be something that we need to access. And I think it's Unreal Ed is what we're going to need to include. Well, let's see if we can get away with it. Like the issue I'm guessing is going to happen here is if we're trying to compile editor stuff into our plugin that runs at runtime. Not. I'll have to check this if it actually builds properly. Okay, so you basically select your it's turn-based. You select your action, and probably there's a grace period there of some milliseconds or whatever for your tick. I mean, that seems pretty reasonable. So the issue that you're talking about is how do you wait for the tick to happen to get the update as soon as possible? So like at time equals 0, you submitted your action, and then a half second later, you're going to want to get that actual response. So how do you push that to the clients is what maybe you're talking about. Not sure how to do it. Because if I was going to be doing a web-based game and I needed, quote-unquote push messages, like the server needs to push these updates to clients, I would do long polling on the implementation and with an asynchronous HTTP server. Alright, so we've constructed our static height map, and I don't see anything on it. Let's see if any of it worked. Alright, so we have the world, gededitor, get editor world, context world, waterfall in cave, trace tag, trace complex, add the ignored actor, hits. No hits still. Well, let's take a look at this water a little bit closer. I got WebSockets, so the stack is quite solid. A lot of things don't really very well support WebSockets, so I don't know. I always fell back to just doing long polling with an HTTP server because compatibility issues. I've seen a lot of people in professional settings die on WebSockets. I mean, if you're receiving a message a second, yeah. Well, at that point, just, I mean, what you could do is have like a sliding window of, kind of work how a video works. Just buffer it up and play both animations after each other. Like I haven't gotten the update tick 5 update message yet, so we're just not going to update to that time. We're just going to, sit here in our idle. And then when 5 comes in, we execute 5, and 6 comes in, we execute 6. And that way you can kind of speed up that frame or whatever so you can catch up to reality. But if it slows down, just be like, well, we're just going to do what we can do. But you can do whatever you want. Like, there's all sorts of cool stuff you can do there, probably. Let's see if a different channel actually gets this to work. No, it's not. It's not working at all. So what are these? These are... This object has no collision. Let's just say block all. And this is... Collision preset is default. Let's just do block all and block all. Yeah, we're still just not getting any directions at all in this thing. Nothing actually hitting with our ray trace. Well, there's almost an unlimited number of ways to solve that sort of latency and lag and everything else. It really depends on the game, so you're going to know the best solution for all that stuff. I gotta kind of go into this, don't I? See if there's anything else going on here with the trace tag. Line trace, multi. World is not null. Have blocking hit, false. Delta magnitude 5. It's probably this 512 is way too short. Yeah, for us to intersect, that's nearly like 2,000 units. So Let's change our max depth on this object to something much more reasonable, to like, 20,000. Construct static height map. Well, let's do that again. Aha, we got hits. What are we hitting? We ran into the Boulder 02 underscore 170211. And what is this? This is Boulder 02 170211. Okay, so we did get our stuff working there. So let's take a look at our material. Gonna focus on server logic first. The game can be played without any clients since it's automated. Yeah, that's a really good idea. That's how we've been very successful in the past on like hack day projects and stuff like that. You just throw it on the server, have the server do the stuff, and then make the client just kind of view what the server does. And it's once you get it rolling along, it's like, yes, it just works, and I had very good experiences with that sort of stuff. And then if you got an API or whatever, somebody can easily write a bot against it and write some test stuff, and it just works real well. You can have a website there with high scores, bam, no problem, because we exposed the data, and it's real simple just to query it. Alright, so we're going to go into our test stuff. Our material is going to mess with this. And what are we doing? We have our alpha channel contains the distance, and our color is the impact normal. Let me just double check that these actually are doing what they should. Impact normal, so this color is... Let's see, look at this. It's... Alright, so if this is all in byteland, then let's play by byteland's rules. And multiply by 256 to turn it into a uint8. And I might throw like a linear color or something else in there, so I can throw floats in there. But we're going to do it one step at a time. I'm not trying to rush this. Yeah, it's one of the things is I'm a server engineer. I did server engineering for 8 years. So when you talk about server-based games, I'm like, ah, man, I like working on those. This, of course, is not one of those. Mainly because servers are expensive. Pretty much every game I've ever worked on, it doesn't run anymore because, the servers aren't online anymore, Like, because it costs money, like Dragon Age Legends, you can't go play that game anymore. Servers don't exist. Dawngate, that game didn't make it out of public beta. That's one of the things that kind of sucks is that, classic games in the future, you'll be like, oh man, just I had this itch to play The Matrix Online this weekend. You're like, oh, whoops, yeah, you can't do that in 2020 because it doesn't exist anymore. Son of a bitch. So is that our texture? I'm having trouble with this editor movement speed here. So I guess that's our texture. If we look straight down, that's our normal? Is it? Alright, so we're ignoring the alpha, and this is just the normal. So obviously, you know, that's fine. Let's just chuck this over here. We'll calculate it. Alright, so it looks like we're flipped on one of our axes. Like, we should be seeing this left side. Now, are we flipped in both directions? I can't really tell with that picture. It looks like we're just flipped with our, I guess that would be the y-axis is flipped. No, sorry, the x-axis is flipped. Why would that be? Well, which way is positive x? Positive x is into the screen. I think that's why I screwed it up. So positive x is, we're actually dealing with negative x. Well, one of the cool things is you're going to have actual real people, right? Like, you know, they have to log in with Twitch, and you can do the Twitch auth flow and everything. So they're actual people. You know, we actually had to, you know, a lot of our games were all free to play and all that. So, you know, our monetization scheme was not based off of the number of users directly. So you had a whole bunch of freeloaders. So, but 1,000 people or something like that, I mean, as long as you don't have complex, you know, interactions between players that have n-squared problems, that's not going to be too bad. You know, a single server or, you know, a cluster of servers totally take care of that without costing you more than like $50 a month. And in the face of overwhelming amounts of, you know, bad things happening with your servers, you know, if you got your update tick there at 500 milliseconds, just, you know, do what other people do and just scale back that tick. So it's only like every. Concerned about bandwidth, yeah. If you're doing like AWS or something else, that's always the hidden killer, is people forget about bandwidth. You got to pay for that crap. It was pretty funny. I did, as a server engineer, I did the calculations. You know, as a lead server engineer, I had to not only write the code but also understand what the code would do to our bottom line in terms of servers. So, like, you know, make the decision of like, we have to spend another couple weeks on this piece of code because we can't afford it. You know, we have to, or the opposite of like, it's fine to run the naive algorithm. We can buy 3 more servers. Nobody cares. But one of the things is you make a build sheet, right? A build sheet was basically, you hand it to a server, an IT guy. They know what servers and equipment that they need. You hand it to a server engineer. They know how to write all their algorithms. You hand it to the business guy. He knows how much it's going to cost. So I had to write that thing for multiple projects. And every time people they'd look at the bandwidth cost and they'd just be, oh my God, I can't believe it's going to cost us, you know, a bajillion dollars. And I'd be like, yeah, you have a 10 gigabyte download size for a free-to-play game. At best, we'll get 2 cents per gigabyte. So every single person who downloads the game costs us 20 cents. You better make that back. And they're like, holy shit. And I'm like, well, you can make the game 1 gigabyte in size, and then you only have to make 2 cents back per user. And they're like, okay, well, what about the rest of the server costs? And I'm like, I don't care about the rest of the server costs. If you can't make back 2 cents or 20 cents per user with them just downloading the game, there's no way in hell we can run this game. Because if we can't afford for them to download it, what the hell's the point here? Oh yeah, peer-to-peer downloaders are real great because high definition assets and all that, and you don't have to pay for the download. That's amazing. That's a huge chunk of money. I need to download, nice the Old Republic, right? It's like a 50 gigabyte download at 2 cents per gigabyte. That's like Akamai enterprise level pricing for your CDN. It's going to cost you a whole $1 per person downloading the damn game. That's a lot of damn money. Anyway, let's get back to actually doing stuff here. So the X is flipped. So the X step needs to be start at the opposite direction and go in the opposite direction. Alright, so the top left is going to be right there. And bottom left so it's top right dot x is going to be 2.0f minus extent. It's going to be center dot x plus extents dot x. The bottom right dot x equals center dot x minus extents dot x. And the bottom left dot x equals center dot x minus extents dot x. So I should flip it around for us. So we'll see if that works. Yeah, sounds like fun is definitely one of those. The build sheet, man, doing server cost analysis stuff and going to business meetings as an engineer is sometimes it's equal parts frustrating and equal parts gratifying because you come in there and you actually have real information, and that always feels good when you're in a meeting where, especially in game development, stuff is based on opinions. Like this, I like how this character moves in the world, is an opinion. And you can back that up with data, like, well, we did a usability test, and 4 out of 5 people gave this, a 7 out of 10, and that's really good compared to this other game. So, we're on the right track. When you actually roll in there with like dollars and values and everything else, you can just really. You don't usually get those meetings in the game industry, so it's nice when you get them. Do we not get anything here? Did I screw up the entire thing? Yeah, alright. Yeah, I think I screwed this up. So what was this before? So the top left was center.x minus extents.x. Alright, so top left and top right need to be the pluses. Bottom left and bottom right need to be the minuses. And our x needs to be the bottom left minus the top left x divided by resolution y. Alright, we just weren't moving along our pixels. Yeah, the other thing that's really funny is when you actually, like a lot of the times when you're working in game development or something else, you don't actually get exposed to any of the business side of it. Like, if you're sitting there programming fireballs, you know, people aren't interrupting you talking about, at least most of the time. They're not messing with you with a whole bunch of other crap. Alright, that's starting to look correct. Alright, so green. What is green? Green RGB. So it means that the normal is in the Y direction? And this is not the Y direction. XYZ, so positive Y is backwards. Blue is up, so blue would be flat. Blue would be flat. I think it's correct. It's interesting though. Doesn't really look correct. Yeah, that's one of the interesting things is you don't usually get to see anything about the actual business, which can, I think, put you at a pretty big disadvantage when you're working on games, because what'll end up happening is you'll kind of lose sight of kind of the business goals and have like this romantic notion of, you know, how game development works or something, and you'll lose track of it. So, you know, when free to play games came in, and you know, designers are all complaining about free to play games have destroyed games and made them awful and all that. In some ways, it's just like, well, yeah, that money is a big part of the game industry, and if you don't have money, you can't make games. So the extents of the texture don't match our given data. Fix me. Yeah, that's correct. It's like, well, you've been pretty damn privileged to work in, you know, some sort of environment where you're not actually, you don't know how you make money. You make it with just a simple box on a shelf. Alright, so this thing is taking our texture coordinates and just mapping this thing onto it. So let's take a look at this mesh that we got going on here. This water surface mesh is geoplane. Geoplane. Let's look at our UV coordinates. How many vertices do we have? Let's see, vertices. All 4. Just 4 vertices, that's it. So we should go from 0 to 1 and all that. So the question is, what? Is this texture actually mapped like this, or what? Well, it depends on the success of this project. If this game is very successful, like we make bajillion $1 million, me and Adam, and since there's only 2 of us, we have to split it 2 ways. Well, 3 ways. Well, 4 ways if you count the Australian and United States government. But between us, we get at least half. So we're splitting the money pretty nicely. So we'll get most of it back if we're successful, which means we'll have plenty of cash to throw around. So it'd be the question: do I want to just like become an independent developer hermit and do what I want for the rest of my life? If we're very successful, I'd probably look into starting my own studio that's very small, like a 10-person studio, and just work on similar games, but more polished, and keep it small, kind of make games, and if one of them blows up, just like sell the damn game to somebody else to make the bigger version of it that the fans want, because as soon as you start not doing that, like Psyonix, right? Like Rocket League blew up. Does that mean Psyonix is going to just disappear? And just become Rocket League, the studio, which would be pretty unfortunate, because then who's going to make the next cool game? Are these all the same? Yeah, they are all the same, aren't they? So I'm not sure why these UV coordinates are... Is it that the texture is wrong, or that the other stuff's wrong? So if it's successful, I'll probably start my own stuff. If it is unsuccessful, like we make basically nothing, yeah, I'm gonna go get a goddamn job. It depends on it's not like I didn't enjoy working on other game projects. I really enjoy it. So, working on a team. The question is, would I work in the game industry still? I was like, yeah, probably. If everything is awful and like Adam and I end up hating each other and I end up hating games and hating everything about it, then, well, I'm a server engineer. I'll just go get a job doing something else and then kind of check out. Other things will become important in my life besides making games. I'll probably, go buy a boat and just sit on a boat for the rest of my life. Anyway, so if we want to take these texture coordinates, I'd like to view the texture coordinates on a plane here. In fact, why don't we just do that? Why don't we just slap the texture coordinate in here or something? Like, make float 4 off of this thing. Just, I guess this is a float 2, so we can do like break float 2. And we'll just do it like this. Is this a float 3 then? Yeah, it's a float 3, isn't it? You'd think I would know this. So let's look at our texture coordinates in the world then. Our texture coordinates are... Gosh, it's real touchy in the editor. So it goes from 0 to 1 for all of our texture coordinates. So we've got something wrong with our actual texture, I think. Go make CRUD apps for big bucks. Yeah, if I wanted to sell out and just go like make as much money as possible, I'd just go to Chicago and join some of the high frequency trading places and, you know, make $500,000 a year. But I don't feel like hating myself just yet in life. You know, I'm still at that naive point where I still feel like I could live with myself. And so I haven't crossed that line. And when I do cross that line, because I know there will be a time where I just hate myself so much that all I care about is money, and then I'll go do that. But not yet. We're not there yet. Give me a couple more years. All right. So there's something wrong with our x and y. So our output. So it goes from 0 to 512. Zero to 512, and then y ticks over. Is this just us writing to this texture incorrectly? So it's going to be from 0 to that, so we're iterating over every x, and then we're supposed to tick over to the y. And so we're going to go from 0 to 512, and we're drawing it the y first, so we're going to go 0 blah 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 blah. We're going to draw it down on this texture. So this texture is tiling though, so there's something wrong with this texture itself. Well, let's just make the texture real small and see what we can do with it, maybe. Let's make it 24 by 24 and calculate it. See what we got at the end of this function. That's still a lot of stuff. So it does go from 0 to 1. So why are we getting weird crap though?